In this interview, I meet up with Kimberlynn Lavelle, who is an education specialist over 15 years, providing an individualized education for hundreds of children with 12 of the 13 qualifying disabilities. She believes firmly that education should be fun and enjoyable. She also believes that children can learn and that parents usually know their children better than anyone else. Let's welcome Kimberlynn. Thank you so much for coming in today. It's a pleasure having you on this interview.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I wanted to start off by asking you, you're an educational specialist, right? Education specialist. I want to ask you, how did your role change over the last few months?
Well, my role has been interesting because I've actually been on maternity leave since January.
Oh, okay.
So my roles, I haven't had to deal directly with all of the COVID stuff, but I know that from talking with my colleagues that if I wasn't still working, that the person who took over for me all she was doing was checking in with parents and with teachers weekly, and then offering like phone calls or Zoom or whatever to the students as needed. But because school wasn't mandatory at that time, there was no like direct services being offered. So it was really kind of sticky.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't really face it quite a bit.
I didn't have to deal with it directly. And that was sort of intentional too. I realized that I wouldn't be able to focus there and here and work from home with a newborn. And so I just stayed on maternity leave.
Okay. Thank you. And what are some of the things that you've been hearing from parents, though, who have, struggling learners or special needs learners, right?
In terms of academic struggles, the biggest one I think I hear about the most is writing. They are like, I can't even think about writing because it's so overwhelming. And that usually is because there's just so much to it, and it's such a tedious task to like try to think about how to spell and what you're trying to say and when to punctuate and when to capitalize and have it all in the right format and indented. And there's so many pieces to writing that if a child is struggling with spelling and with coming up with ideas and when to capitalize and when to punctuate, they're trying to work on like 5 skills all at the same time, and it just becomes really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a lot of reading concerns, parents wanting to make sure that children are progressing in reading, and then math, just in general, a lot of times parents get confused about how to teach math, which I know you're very familiar with, I'm sure.
Yeah.
A lot of right now, it seems like parents that are asking about homeschooling, the biggest question I see is just like what curriculum to use or which charter to sign up with. And then the one other question I do see pretty regularly is they'll ask about services, like OT services or speech services, and how that works.
Yes, it's harder to be online and deliver those services, right?
Yeah.
For some students, it's not. This doesn't work. The screen doesn't work. They need the person to person, right? So it must be hard getting those services to them, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what should parents know about homeschooling? So let's say in the fall, that's our biggest question right now, right? That's the whole summit is about that, discussing about what education will look like in the fall. Is it going back blended or is it homeschooling? So what should parents know about homeschooling special needs kids or struggling learners?
There's so much. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest is one of the biggest questions I always get asked is like what curriculum to use. Yes. And there's so many out there that it's not helpful to have that question of what's a good special needs curriculum, because what is your child's special need? Like who is your child? I need to know so much more to even begin to answer that. And there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of really great curriculums and programs out there. And I think just like every child, whether they're special needs or not, they're all unique. They're all different. Everybody has a unique personality, different interests, different strengths and struggles and learning styles. So I think one of the things, there are some kids that are homeschooled and they're the kind of kid that it doesn't even matter how you teach them, they're going to learn. They're just, if you put something in front of them, they're going to learn whatever it is you thought you were kind of trying to teach them. And they're like, oh yeah, I totally get this. And then there are the struggling learners that no matter what you try, don't seem to get it. And those are the ones that you have to recognize that if they're struggling, you keep trying something a little bit different, Learning a variety of strategies is really helpful, way more than having the right curriculum. So it's a lot about adapting the instruction for them. You know, like I was talking about with the writing, there's so many components to it. Sometimes that means that we're not going to work on anything other than spelling when we're working on spelling. We're not going to work on anything other than coming up with ideas when we're trying to come up with what we're writing. So really separating out all those skills. They're only working on one thing at a time and they're not feeling so overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And then recognizing within that, like kind of how do you support their learning? Like in school, we look for accommodations that they might need to access the general education curriculum. So you're kind of looking for the same kind of thing at home. Usually it's a little bit easier because you don't have to deal with it in a whole classroom of general ed kids. It's just your kid or maybe yours and your several kids, but you can look at what would help my child access, this science curriculum, what would allow them to be able to do this curriculum, and as independently as possible.
Yeah.
So,
and also having the expectation adjusted, right? Because, one of the things I find is that when you're working with your own kids, your expectations are a little different than when you're working with someone else. Like as a teacher, I know like I have a different expectation. I don't know why. I try not to have it for my son, but it comes up, right? It comes up from your core values and stuff. You're just like, oh yeah, why can't you do it kind of idea, which is bad. Right. I try to correct myself. So when you're going to homeschool, I think parents have to remember that those little chunks, right? You take one skill at a time. Don't massively put so many skills together and then get overwhelmed yourself and overwhelm your child, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. When you're feeling overwhelmed, take a step back because nobody's learning.
No, it'll just become
absolutely
a bad experience. So when they're setting up a homeschool, that's one thing that I think every parent should remember, especially if you have a struggling learner.
Yes.
Take it slow. And as you said, curriculum is just a guide.
Right.
It doesn't dictate what you do every day, right? And it doesn't have to dictate you or the kid. So it's very important for them to understand. So what are the advantages of homeschooling a special need child?
So many. There's so many things that I'm still in the classroom I've got a couple things going on. So when I'm in the classroom, there's things that I can't do because I'm constrained to, we're at school from, 8 to 2:30. And when there was no COVID, that was our reality. So I was, the service I offer in the public school is I pull kids out mostly. Sometimes I'm pushing in. Mostly it's better for most kids to pull out. So, but I'm always like, well, what do I pull them out of? Because now they're going to be missing something in order to come see me. And maybe they learn best first thing in the morning, but I don't want to pull them out of math, which is happening first thing in the morning. And so I have to deal with this whole scheduling issue. It's so difficult. Whereas at home, you can say, oh, my child learns super good first thing in the morning before they've even had breakfast. That's when we're going to work on math for 10 minutes even. It doesn't. Yes. Because that's the other part of it. Sometimes pretty much every kid learns better in small chunks than one huge stretch of time. So if I could, I would love to see all of my students for 10 minutes and then they go do something else and then they come see me for 10 minutes later. And then because 3 10-minute sessions are way more powerful than 1 hour-long session.
Yes.
So I do what I can in the public school to keep that in mind and make that work for their advantage. But it's a struggle for sure that homeschooling has as a major advantage, the whole schedule of everything. And including scheduling, when are they getting exercise? When are they getting to move around?
Yes.
I'm very concerned by some of the guidelines that are basically kids don't get to have recess in the coming fall, that they might not get any recess. They can go to the restroom, they can get water, they can have snacks, but they don't get recess. They don't get to go play. My babies need to play. Like, if I want them to learn, they need to move. It's so powerful. There's a huge connection there. So I get really worried about that. And at home, if you know your kid's getting wiggly, they're antsy, go play for an hour. Like, you've got that adaptability that you can decide what is really the ideal structure of our day to have the most impactful learning. And it shouldn't be 6 hours of the day. It might take all day in some ways, because most of the time isn't spent doing any kind of academics. It's 5 minutes, and then 2 hours later another 10 minutes and whatever. And then the environment, like, I can only do so much to control the environment that my students are learning in. I can't always control the noise, except giving them like noise canceling headphones, which then can be a different kind of irritant for them. The movement side of it, how much movement they can get. In my room, kids can always be moving around, but sometimes that's distracting to other kids. So then that's a challenge. Or in a general ed classroom, I have to sometimes fight for the kids to be allowed to move around because it's distracting to other kids or the teacher themselves. So that can be difficult. And whether you're outside, like if you're reading a book about flowers, it's ideal that you go outside and look at a flower and, or just sit outside while you're learning, because it's just it's so enjoyable to be outside. But maybe your child gets distracted too easily, and it's better for them to be inside in a quiet room. Maybe it's better for them to be working at a table or a desk, or maybe it's better for them to be sprawled across the couch or the floor or under the bed or whatever. So there's so much individualizing that you can do with like what they really truly need to learn. And there's a lot of teachers in schools that are trying to do that with flexible seating, but that's going to be even harder now with this whole COVID thing right now. But I've seen a lot of really good stuff with teachers trying to allow for kids to work on the floor or standing up or whatever, but you have way more options even at home than the best that we can do in a public school or any traditional school.
Yeah, you can modify it according to your child's best need, right?
And the curriculum, you can choose, what are you interested in? What level are you really at? Or are we even really using a curriculum, or are we using something else that is guiding what we're learning? And there's just so much individualizing that can happen at home that we're limited at. We do our best, we genuinely do, but we're limited in what we can do. So I definitely.
Yeah, those are great examples of how at home you can just go crazy, make it accommodate them as much as they want, right? And flexibility, right? That's huge at the time, because not like, as you said, and another part of pulling kids out of classrooms, like what you do is like the kids also feel like, oh, now I have to go. Like it's either the choice, right? It's either I'm here to have fun or I'm going to have to go over there to do learning, right? So it's kind of, they're making a choice.
Yeah.
So that's hard on them. So this is good. They don't have to do that.
Yeah, or they use me as an escape, which also tells me that it's unpleasant for them to be in the general ed classroom. So there's a problem there too, even when they're happy to come see me, either they're, because I get a variety, and no matter what, it's never necessarily a good thing. It's like,
there's
always a problem involved in some way. So
Yes. Who should not homeschool, in your opinion?
In my opinion, people, if it feels just way too overwhelming based on your child's level of needs, there are some very severe needs children who I think can be homeschooled, but sometimes the level of need all day, every day is just too draining for a parent. They need someone else to step in and handle some part of the care, the education, the something, so that they can have relief. And I have no judgment on that whatsoever. And not even severe, like the typically severe, but like even kids that maybe are ADHD that you just are like, I need a break from you. Like, I don't want to teach you myself. I don't find it enjoyable. I don't, that we have too much conflict. And there are some solutions for the conflict part of it that can be easier, but if you just, you're like, I don't want to, then don't. And then if you're just like too busy, you know, like if you're just too busy with work, with other children or other commitments, and I think specifically if your child is special needs, or some kind of a struggling learner, you have to be willing to commit some time to learning yourself how to teach your child.
Yes.
And because a lot of them can't learn from just like online instruction, they need someone with them, next to them, helping them. Even if there is online instruction, that there's sometimes like basically you're the translator that's helping, or you're giving them whatever tool. So you have to kind of have the time to learn yourself and willingness to learn yourself and be the student so that you know how to help your child.
Very, very important. And it could get quickly overwhelming if and a lot of conflict between your child and you, right?
Yeah.
So the relationship is the most important, right, at home for you.
Yeah.
So when you start bringing in the education and you're not ready and you have a busy life, then it's hard for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. If someone decides to homeschool, should they hire a tutor? So going back to, you know, if I'm overwhelmed and I have a work to do, can I bring in someone to help then?
Yeah, and I've seen this question a few times. So that one is, it's not a horrible option completely, but I have major reservations. Sometimes the tutor can be a good option for like specific little bits of time or instruction. Most especially if you're pretty busy, you don't have time to learn how to do a particular program that you've decided is really good for your child. Like there are specific dyslexia programs, and you say, okay, I want to do this specific program. I don't want to learn how to do it myself. I'm going to hire a tutor that is already specially trained, knows how to deliver that specific program.
Yes.
That would be an option. But I would not hand over all instruction to a tutor. And if your child really is special needs, really a struggling learner, even there's some tutors out there that are like retired teachers. They've got great hearts that are great, but they might not have the best training for struggling learners. So there might be some difficulty there. So I would be very hesitant to be like, oh yeah, they're a teacher, they can do the whole thing. You would really want to keep very close eye on that.
Yeah. So the adaptation of curriculum or whatever the student is learning is not necessarily the expertise of a tutor. I had to distinguish myself away from tutor. I started off as a teacher, then tutor. I was doing math. I knew that I wasn't tutoring them. I was coaching them. So that's why my business is now a coaching business, where I actually look at the curriculum and work with the child to adapt to that level. So that's what you're talking about, is what I do, because I've been working as a behavior interventionist myself. So I was able to do that for a lot of students who are struggling with math, right? So tutors are not, I mean, I think parents sometimes think they can just handle everything, but they're not. They just can help you. It's like a helper in the department of education, right? Yeah. They can kind of see it. And even some, as you said, older teachers, their way of teaching is so different. They're like, do it. What's wrong? Why can't you do it? What's wrong here, right? Because that's how we learned before. Like we didn't have all these learning struggles before. Even if we did, they didn't treat it like the way we treat it now. We give a lot of support to our students, right? So,
if they were a general ed teacher, they might have just sent them to the special ed teacher. Like they didn't handle it themselves necessarily. No. And there are some really great teachers that are now retired that do great jobs adapting. So I don't want to like blanket anything, but I would just really be cautious about ever trying to go that route.
Yeah, keep an eye on, as you said, and make sure
Yeah.
that they know how to teach that material, unless you hired someone who's specifically trained for that kind of disability that your child has, right?
Right,
It's very
right.
important, yeah.
And that was, I thought of the other thing I was going to say is you might like hire a tutor even like short term. Like I really don't know how to teach prime factorization. I have no idea how to do that. I'm going to hire someone to teach that, because then if you're also overseeing it, or maybe you're even hiring them to teach you, and then from there you're teaching your child. So if there's like, I don't know how to do this skill myself, I think I need a tutor, you might want the tutor for yourself, or at least oversee that the tutor is understanding where your child is at currently and what supports your child needs to be able to access whatever skill they're trying to learn.
Yeah, the adaptation the tutor needs to understand. And also it takes time, right? Like sometimes, I mean, your idea is better, like learn it yourself and then take that material and then teach it to your child according to their needs, because if you don't give enough time for someone to understand your child, it's hard for them to adapt it. Because if I just come for one day, right, to teach prime factorization, I mean, I have no idea about the behavior, right? There's a whole bunch of behavior that's behind a child, right? I need to understand how do they listen? How do they work? What learning style are they using? You know, do they need to stand up, or do they need to walk around while I talk, right? These are adaptation that
they're not being disobedient when they stand up, or they're not being, they're listening really well when they're drawing a picture.
So we have to understand those clues from them, right? Yes.
And also they need to be able to, you as the parent, if you're hiring them for a short amount of time to teach this skill and then they're gone, you need to be able to keep reviewing that skill, because especially struggling learners, but all learners typically need a lot of review. Like you have to keep coming back to it and practicing it again and again. So if you don't know how to do it, then the next time you're like, okay, we need to practice that, it'll be harder for you to support your child. So learning to do it yourself is really the best.
But it is,
you don't have to get a full teaching credential to be able to do it. You can do it.
Yeah. And seeing what's important at that time, right? If it's a fight against learning something like algebra or geometry or something, if it's not, the child's not ready or something, you can leave it for later years. Like that's what I've been hearing from a lot of the experts. Like don't push it when the child's not ready.
Right. Absolutely. Meet your child where they're at. And go based off of what they're interested in, and then see if you can hook them to be interested in, you know, whatever the algebra, because they're interested in this aspect of cooking, and you can tie those together. You know, you can get creative with that too to try to draw them in, but you definitely don't ever fight. Nobody's learning if people are fighting. It doesn't help anything. Don't push it. Definitely.
So you would say that hire a tutor for help as long as the tutor is aware of the condition of the learning struggles of the student, they understand, as well as the parents is overseeing it and, you know, kind of in their.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to recommend it flat out, but I'm totally against it either. I think it definitely has the benefits, but there should definitely be some oversight from the parent to make sure that it's a good fit, that and the child is really truly learning from this person, and that the parent will be able to support that learning continuing when the person isn't there.
Yeah. In Canada, I'm not sure about US, but we do have like respite workers or, you know, other social workers that work with the child if you do have severe disability, right, or something.
Yeah.
You guys have that out there too?
Yeah, we do.
So they come to your home and help the parents, give them some time to relieve, right? So what about them? Do you recommend them? Because they know the child kind of well if they've been working for a while, right?
Yeah. If the person is right, if the person's a good fit, then sure, you could give them something specific, probably to practice more than to be the instructor of. But you can say, oh, we've been practicing this, let me show you how we do it, and then you could have them practice certain skills to reinforce, probably more than, because I'm thinking usually with those more severe students, you're working on more more basic
life skills.
And they need a lot of just practice doing it over and over and over again. So you could definitely teach someone how to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a curriculum that you recommend?
No. There's nothing I like categorically recommend for all special needs children. There's not, like I said, I think most curriculums will work in some way for someone. Will work in some way for someone. And I feel like way too many parents, especially special needs parents, are trying to find like the magic curriculum, and they're much better off trying to find the skills for teaching anything, and then take whatever curriculum they can find, maybe free from someone who just did it last year and they're selling it on or giving it away, or what, you know, like you can get so much stuff pretty inexpensively if you get it used. And that's a better investment of your time and money than trying to like just spend hours digging for the best one. Because I see this question asked all the time on like Facebook groups, and every single time it's a different list of curricula. Like everybody's got their own opinion of this one's the best, this one's the best. And most of the time, if you really look at them, they're so similar.
Yes.
So they do tend to have more in common than is different. And if you know how to teach your child, then it doesn't matter what you hand them. You know, like I've heard a good teacher can teach in a sandbox with a stick. Like you don't need a curriculum. So if you know what you're trying to teach, you don't need a curriculum. You can, you know, my favorite math tool is actually Legos, because there's so much you can do with it. So like there's so much you can teach if you just have the right tools.
Yes, yes. Imagination, creativity, right? Those are part of the curriculum too, right? And I think for parents, I can relate to them. Why? Because you know, when you're within the school system, like you and I in the past, right? For me, you know, like what ticking the box, like, you know, we kind of go through the list, right?
Yeah.
So they're so used to that, right? So they don't have that's their guideline, right? So if I have it, then I won't miss it. If I don't have a curriculum, then I'll miss something, and then I'll, you know, ruin my kid, right? This is something else that everyone's saying on social media and stuff, right? Am I going to ruin my child's education? Because what if I miss a box? But learning is not ticking box, right? But that's what we're drilled to, even us as adults. So we're just kind of have to move slowly out of that phase and think learning as a continuum from your kitchen to grocery store. It happens all the time.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And if you're trying to tick boxes, especially if you have a struggling learner, like I said, we need a review. So if you aren't like actively thinking, okay, what am I trying to teach? What do we need to review? And not like that you have to be thinking about it all the time, but if it's not kind of on your mind, that you're just like, okay, let's go to the next page in the workbook. Let's go to the next page. Then at the end of the year, they might not have truly learned very much at all because they did this whole workbook, but they couldn't do it again without instruction all over again. So you want to be able to just review things all the time, and you can get so much more in depth with, like in math, you know, if you do like one math problem, you could work on it 10 different ways and do it super intensely, and you get so much more out of it than doing 10 problems. Yep. So there's so much to it that it can be a good guide, because it is easier. I admit it's easier to just go to the next page every day. Like, okay, what do we do tomorrow? And not think about it too much. But to really get really good learning, you want to be able to have it at the grocery store, and while you're driving in the car, and while you're baking, and while you're playing with Lego or whatever else. Like you want to be able to just incorporate it in all aspects of life. Yes.
So that's one of the questions that people, when they come to me for my service, they ask, what curriculum do you use to teach your method, right? Because I've developed a system for my teaching math, especially for struggling students, right? And they would ask, and I said, I don't have any curriculum. Whatever curriculum meets the child is the curriculum that would fit, right? But if a parent brings it to me from a school district, like let's say they're coming from grade 10, they have already a curriculum. So I just kind of get the child to meet that curriculum, right? Like,
Yeah.
Wherever they are, I meet the child from where they were to where they need to be, right? You take them. So it's hard for a parent. It's not easy job to do that at home.
Right.
But just understanding that curriculum doesn't really, fixating on this curriculum is not a good idea.
Right.
Overall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, getting
Yeah.
trapped in it.
It's easier. We always want to just like buy the solution that's easy, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. So
yeah, I've been talking to a lot of the other experts too, and they're all like, yeah, you don't know how many they're homeschooling moms themselves, and they're like, I can tell you, I have a many curriculum that I have even opened it.
Yeah.
Like I just bought it because I was so afraid that I will skip one of the box or whatever, but I haven't even opened it, right? So.
Yeah, and they all look beautiful, right? Like, because they all are. They're beautiful, they're great, and they all do a great job. As long as you so you can pick whichever one you want or none of them, and but you have to, like you said, like meet your child. Where's your child actually at? Because if you buy this 5th grade math curriculum and your child is really struggling with regrouping in addition and subtraction, like there's going to be a big gap there of struggles. So like, and maybe your child's going to feel horrible if you then buy the 2nd grade math curriculum. So, but if you just know what those skills are and you just work on those skills without any grade level attached, it can make your child feel so successful because all of a sudden they get it, and because you're not trying to force them to do 5th grade math when they aren't ready for it.
Yeah, and that's a cool part about homeschooling.
Yeah.
Because you're not grade specific. You can just work on any level you want and nobody will know, right? In school, if you do grade 2, then there's a stigma, right, as well for a student. But at home, there is none.
Yeah.
Free, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
perfect.
I know. As we go, I just keep thinking of more and more advantages to it. Because
yes.
So the other is that all those I've heard way too many times, and it breaks my heart every time, kids saying, "I'm dumb."
Oh yeah.
Because they know that they're struggling with something and the kid sitting next to them isn't struggling with it, and they won't listen to you when you point out all the things that they're really good at that the kid next to them isn't so good at. They feel miserable. So it's so hard when they're like, oh,
you get your test back and you look over your shoulder and that person has, almost close to 100%, you have 50. Like it's instant comparison, right? It's instant. You can't avoid it. No one can avoid it, right? And 20 years of working with students struggling with math, every time the first thing is, I'm dumb. I don't get math. Math is hard. Like it's over and over again. I'm not born with the talent to do
Right. They get the fixed mindset and they're like, I'm bad at math.
Yeah, so interesting. But that's what we don't want our children to get, right? That mindset. Protect them, right? Homeschooling is 100% better for that.
Yeah.
Can homeschool children receive services such as speech and OT?
Yes. It really depends on where you're at. I don't know how Canada works. And even in the US, every state has their own laws and things, and even in each district tends to do things slightly differently. So I would say if you are currently in a public school in the US and maybe Canada, and your child is getting OT speech services, talk to the school district and say, hey, I want to homeschool my child. I don't want to use your distance learning or home learning program, but I do want my child to still get speech and OT. Is that an option? And I would probably at the same time, because you're going to be waiting for an answer probably, at the same time, I'd be contacting your medical professionals and asking them for speech and OT services through the medical side, because both districts and medical practices have speech and OT services, PT. And so a lot of those services that your child is getting and you feel like they really, really need, they can get either get it through the district and maybe over Zoom, maybe the person is really teaching you instead of them teaching your child directly. It depends on the kid. I have seen video speech lessons work somewhat. It's not the best, but it can work somewhat. Or then when hopefully this whole COVID thing goes away, that you might actually be able to take them to the district for services. So you can definitely look into that if it's an option sort of where you're at and how much. I'm saying look at both options so that you can not feel like frustrated trying to fight anyone. Like just see which one's easier and go with that.
Whoever gives you the quickest and best answer, right?
Yeah, I would just go with throw it all out there, cast a wide net, take the best fish, and then hope,
Yeah, perfect.
So,
that's good advice for sure.
Yeah.
That's a hard one, right? I mean, I don't know, but you guys have insurance that will pay for it sometimes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so if they go through the medical, then the insurance should be paying for it. So then sometimes you get resistance there, and then they're like, no, the schools has to pay for it. So kind of hitting them both at the same time, it just saves time in the long run, instead of like doing one and then they're going to say, well, go to this, and then they're going to, instead of people bouncing you back and forth, you can generally get services through either, really. Both of them should be offering the services. Both of them should provide it. I wouldn't get it from both almost ever. It usually is better just to have one person working with the child at a time, but I would just go with whichever one is first to say yes, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what did you notice during the COVID, like lockdown? Like, I mean, OT and all of the service is like this, what we're doing, like across the screen, right? Like it's, I mean,
if that. I didn't see a lot, but yeah, we actually, the school I'm at, in the US, there's such a shortage of speech therapists that a few years ago, our school was only able to offer speech online from a service. Like it was we literally could not hire anyone. We could not find anyone to hire that was a qualified speech teacher. So that was like my experience, is seeing those kids for about a year. They were doing only online speech therapy. There was a person who was not a speech therapist or had any speech, anything. She was in the room to support the kids and kind of like make sure they knew how to use the computer and point to things if the kid was confused on where they should be looking. But it worked somewhat. It was better than nothing. It's not ideal, but yeah, it's, and I know like it depends on the location for during COVID, whether, or in the last few months, if there were services provided or not, because in general, most school districts were only offering optional schooling. So they weren't really required to provide any IEP services. And some school districts offered if parents wanted it. Some parents just felt too overwhelmed and didn't want it at the time. And it's from some things I've heard in other districts, nothing was offered, and parents were frustrated. So I think it was just like everything hit too hard and nobody knew what to do about it. Play things
too quick.
Yeah.
Quick, yes, for sure. I want to, on the positive side, what do you recommend or suggest to parents, who have struggling learners, right? So that they can provide education at home confidently to their kids, right? How can they?
Yeah, so that's what I'm all about. Is I provide phone calls, emails, conversations with parents, teaching them how to teach their child. So usually we start with a 60 to 90 minute phone call where I learn as much as I can about all of their child's struggles, strengths, what's going on, and we target what is the like biggest area of concern, or maybe up to 2 that we really need to target right away. So that I can just teach 2 or 3 strategies for those big areas of concern. And then I follow up with emails, and then we can keep having follow-up phone calls, follow-up emails to teach the parents how to work through those struggles. Previously, I've worked with, so besides in the public school, besides providing direct service to students, I was working with the SST teams, the student study teams. And I would talk with the parents and the teachers that are worried about this struggling kid who I've never met, and they're just telling me things. And then I'm giving suggestions from that on what they can be doing to support the learning of that child. What is it that's happening? So I'm just kind of listening to what are their strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are their concerns, how can we meet this child where they're at to help them be successful? So this is kind of taking that to homeschooling, is talk to me about your child. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are you worried about? And then let's come up with a plan of action. What can we do to meet that struggle? What do you need to know how to do to meet that struggle? And then in the emails, just so the parents aren't trying to like take notes while we're talking, the email is basically notes from our conversation so that they know what we talked about, and then any links that might be helpful to them, I include in there. If appropriate, I would create and send a video of how to do something so they have something like they can keep reviewing. And then we just keep following up with like just going over it again and again to dig into new concerns or whether or not that strategy worked, if they need to try some other strategies, or if they don't know if they were doing that strategy right.
So that they can come to someone like you where they can bounce off their fears and ideas and what works, what doesn't work, right? Try this.
Right. And we just have that conversation. So just really giving the parents the tool to be the best educator for their child, providing the best environment, the best scheduling, and the best instruction. Because usually that's the piece that parents are like, that's what they're trying to get out of the perfect curriculum, is how to be the best instructor. But the curriculum isn't what makes a good teacher. So that's what I'm trying to help them bridge that gap, because they also don't need to know everything I know. They only need to know what I know about a child with their child's profile. So there's so many other kids out there that they don't need to know how to help those kids. So they don't need a full teaching credential or special education credential. They just need these specific strategies that are for their child.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I am going to be developing an online course academy, so it'll be kind of a cheaper option instead of just the one-on-one, but it'll give a variety of strategies, and then I will still help you decide which of those strategies you should really be looking at. So you still don't have to learn everything, but you can go to just the things that you need to be working on, practicing, and there'll be some opportunities there to practice and make sure that you understand, you know what you're doing, and can feel successful. And
awesome. So finally, do you think homeschooling is a better option for parents with special needs students or struggling learners?
If they're ready,
the parents,
if they're ready, if they are willing to put in that commitment of I'm going to learn how to do this. I want to do this. If they're, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed, because you probably do and are, and it's normal and it's fine. If, and it's not, don't try to make school at home, right? It's not, don't do that. But if you're willing, if you have the interest to be the best educator for your child, if you have the desire to give your child that high quality education in the best possible environment, especially right now, I really encourage parents to do that. It's the recommendations that I'm seeing just concern me so much, especially like ADHD kids. Like, seriously, you're gonna not let them go to recess. Mm-hmm. Like, how are they gonna learn? They have to move, those poor babies. But all kids have to learn or move, like, to learn. Yes. Like, you have to have movement. So it concerns me so much. And one of the huge benefits of going to a traditional school is the social interaction, which you can get homeschooling. So that's a different thing. But that's one of the ideas, right? Like, people have this, but they have to have friends. Okay, but all their friends are wearing masks and they can't go play together. So they're all just sitting in the same room together, maybe having dialogue. That is something I like about a traditional school, is sometimes there's really great conversations with, you know, the whole community talking, especially like some really good teachers that really can lead those deep conversations. Mm-hmm. So there is a benefit, right? Nothing is absolutely perfect without any benefits or without any problems, but there's so many benefits to homeschooling, especially if you have a struggling learner, especially in this current
time
pandemic. Yeah, and if it works really well this year and you enjoy it, and then the pandemic has been dealt with a vaccine or whatever gets us past this situation, then it might be a really good opportunity to continue in the coming years.
But your advice is, at least for the time when things are uncertain.
Yeah, for this year, I think it would be especially helpful for a lot of kids, but especially struggling learners. I think if the parent wants to learn how to teach their child, the child is better off at home. I'm thinking about some of my kids that have very high anxiety. Yep. I don't want to see them at the public school this coming fall. Like, there's one kid, I can just picture him. He is going to be in tears.
Yes.
Because
I can picture a lot of
things to move. He's ADHD and he's got anxiety. So he needs to move. He can't move. He has to wear a mask that he can't tell if people are happy or not because they're all wearing masks.
Yes, like, that's my biggest thing.
I'm praying that his mother keeps him home because he's going to be a wreck. And that's true of so many of my students. And I love them so much I don't want to see them in the fall.
Yes.
Which is terrible, but it's just, you know, I want what's best for them, genuinely. So yeah. I would definitely encourage parents who are willing to put in that time and effort and have the ability to do so. And if you really can't, for whatever reason, then know that we are trying our best. But
yes.
If you're on this summit, you're probably thinking you can, so go for it.
Yes, that's the thing, right? They're on the fence going, which way do I go? That's kind of, we want to give them enough information and resources and confident that, you know, if you want to try it, don't have to try it forever, even a short term, because of the inconsistency, right? Because you send them and then something happens at that school, then you have to keep them back again at home, because there's such a, uncertainty surrounding this whole thing. For someone who's a, special needs or struggling learner, emotional struggle is huge, right? That is huge. And one of the things I'm struggling with going out is I can't see people smile. Like I'm always smiling at people, right? I don't see them anymore. And I mean, I can't see them. It feels like I'm almost in a different planet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm seeing like, I'm totally changed the way I go towards a person and smile while I walk by even. I don't even have to say anything, but we always greet, right?
Right.
And our special needs students really thrive on watching people's emotions through that. It's not words, they really thrive on that. So that is going to be hard if they're at school and some of them might not even understand why do you have the mask on, right?
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah. And just having the mask on can make them anxious, and I can imagine most of them are going to want to be taking it off all the time, and I don't blame them. Yeah. And so it's just, there's a lot of things that it's going to be a really rough year for everybody, but I just feel like really the struggling learners are really going to struggle extra. So I just
Well, in the summit, they're going to learn quite a bit about different options of homeschooling, unschooling, or whatever they choose, right? But whatever fits their vision and their family and their child. If their heart is telling them that if they're on the summit and if they're searching for these information, that means your heart is telling you something important. Yeah. And you follow it. We usually follow it, right? Parents usually follow that. So yes. Thank you so much.
You should feel overwhelmed. It's okay.
Yes.
We're here for you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, that's part of having kids anyway, right? If it's not this, we're worried about something else anyway. So that's part of being, you're a parent, new parent, so you understand that, right?
Yeah, I've got two. Yeah.
Yes.
So even though they're not technically of school age, I consider myself a homeschooler because they definitely learn at home all day, every day.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. The minute they're born, they're learning something or not, right? Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for your time. We learned a lot, and I hope parents get the right information to make a decision that best for their family and their kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much.